everyone, Michael Zaldivar here from the Wilson Realty team of Keller Williams and Allen. I'm coming at you today to talk a little bit about the past, what trends we've seen, and what we can expect if we do go a little deeper into a recession here, similar to the effects that we saw during the financial crisis and the housing crisis, especially of 2008 to 2012. Now, when you're looking at graphs and everything, I totally understand that it can be a little bit boring, but stick with me. I promise you're going to get some great information. You're going to come away with a little bit more knowledge and what my takes are of what you should expect moving forward, and whether or not now is a great time to buy or when will be the best time to buy, which I know is front of mind for every single person who's looking to buy a house in this market today. So come along with me on this ride, and I'll see you at the end. All right, so when we're going to think about analyzing the future, a great place to start is in analyzing the past. So follow my cursor here. We're going to start around 2006, where we were around $140,000 for a house in the North Texas market. We saw a little bit of a high here at $157,000 right around 2007. And then as we get into the financial crisis in 2008, we see a little bit of a dip, but it is immediately followed with peaks and valleys that are taking us in an upward motion. We see the lowest low here of $130,000, which is about 17% below where the financial crisis began. Now, as we continue to track this, we only see these little dips in the winter months. So, if you're thinking about buying a house, that is your first clue there that the winter months may be the best time for you to go, especially as builders get inventory again, because that gives you the opportunity to help them clear their books before the end of the year, and that saves them on taxes, which they can then pass some savings on to you. Now, as we continue on, we just cleared the end of 2012, and we are now skyrocketing. Now, the important thing to note, like I said, is that throughout the entire 2008 to 2012 timeframe, when we had very similar interest rates and even a little bit higher than we do right now, we continued to see that little rise. Now, if you continue to follow the cursor up, we're now a little over 200,000, 230,000. So in those time frames, you saw $100,000 worth of equity growth. As we continue now, as we get closer to today's date, we're in 2019. So this is really the next 3 years, and wow, look at that amazing return on investment for anyone who bought a house in that time. Now, if you didn't and you're wondering, well, how am I going to get myself into this market? It kind of seems like the present is your best bet. Get in where you can, make a great investment, and really start planning for the future. So now we're up here at $410,000, which is just shy of $300,000 more in value than when we started looking at this around 2006. Now, as I said before, there was a 17% drop in house pricing. Now, as far as I can tell, that lasted only 1 month, and that was back in the 2009 or 2010 range there. So as you can see, these peaks and valleys as we cross 2007 and just kind of look at that line as it passes through that 2012 mark, you can see that the peaks and valleys are there, but they are consistently moving in an upward trajectory, which tells us that our market is very sturdy. Now, one reason for that is probably that when there is big trouble all across the country, people tend to flee the coastlines and come here where we're very business friendly. All right, so now let's look into a different graph. That previous one was the average sale price. Now, as we look at this one, we are going to look at the median price per square foot, which is another marker that tells us how the market is doing. As we get in here to 2008, we see about $78 per square foot. We do see some dips. We see the price drop a little bit significantly, like I said, about that 17% at the lowest of low points. But as you can see, it is kind of moving in that same upward trajectory. Now, the price per square foot does dip just a little bit during that 2008 to 2012 point when interest rates were a little bit higher. I should note that interest rates being higher during those dates is just higher than they are now and higher than they have been for the past few years. It is important to note that during that time, those were still really historical lows, despite there being financial issues in the nation. So, it is important to note that we may not be able to count on those rates dropping back down to what we've gotten used to now. We've been a little spoiled. All right, so now as we get up to the present date, you're going to see us getting up to about $191 per square foot in the North Texas market. Yes, it is true that certain counties have a little bit higher, some counties have a little bit lower, but this is just North Texas MLS as a whole. So, and you can see how that's accelerating in a major way, obviously, as we have, different things going on inside of the country. People tend to move toward the middle where, the cost of living has been traditionally a little bit better. All right. Now, moving into the next one here. This is the number of new listings. You can see these huge peaks and valleys. Now, I told you I was going to kind of show you and demonstrate when would be the best times of year to buy. So where you can see now in May and June and even July, you're at the top of the peak moving back down, which means that is when there are a lot of new listings, which is good in one sense, but bad in another because you have a lot of buyers out during that time as well. So you have a lot of competition. Now, as you get down into the winter months, you do start to see fewer listings overall, and traditionally that's because people are going to stop moving during that time. But that said, it means that usually those sellers are very motivated to get that house sold. So, as we continue down this graph, you can see as we were talking about the 2008 through 2012 timeframe, these peaks and valleys get a little bit tighter. So what that means is that there were still the times of the year where fewer people were selling, but during the times of the year that you have a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers all active at the same time during those summer months, the peaks didn't quite go up as high. Now, that's not necessarily a crazy bad thing. It just means that there were fewer people in the market, which makes sense because when you get into recessions, people kind of hold on for dear life sometimes and really don't want to take many risks. So that is something that we may be looking at here in the near future. We already have a little bit of lower inventory, and as you can see, as we move into the more present dates, these peaks and valleys are insanely high and then insanely low, and that is simply a function of people reacting to the market. Obviously, they see a lot of houses going for a really high price and realize, hey, I can get my investment big gains and cash out and then kind of move on to the next thing. It's also due in part to investors buying in the area as well. So now let's move into the 30-year fixed mortgage rates. You can kind of see us moving from the top of the chart here is 2022. In June right there, we were at 5.52. The July numbers won't be released yet, but they're probably right around 6 based on the averages that I've been seeing at least. Now at the bottom, you can see the annual average. So the average that was for the whole year, last year being 2.96, just historic lows. Then, as you follow the cursor there, you'll see some numbers going a little bit up. Generally, you'll see some highs, you'll see some lows, but generally speaking, as we move down the chart, you're gonna see these numbers kind of gradually get a little bit higher. Part of that is, just due to the fact that, as I said, we've been in historic lows. So as the years have gone on, rates have gotten a little bit better and a little bit better. Here's another one here at 3.66. That was obviously a really great year. That was right at the end of 2012. So, possibly just motivating people to get back in the market and everything else. So let's look from 2008 to 2012, and what you're going to see is a rate of 6.03% when we started. That's an annual average rate, and a 3.66 when we ended. So if we're thinking about today in these terms, one thing that comes to my mind is that we're probably going to see our rates jump up higher than we're used to, probably much higher than we're used to, before we see them start to go back down as any kind of a recession gets back under control. So how long can it take for rates to come down? That's a really good question. Let's have a look here. So we know we started seeing the lowest rates at around the 2012 point. As we go back, we keep seeing these numbers go up and up and up and up and up. So the main question that I had was, well, when did they peak and what was going on during that time frame? As you see here, back in the 80s, you're going to see some pretty high rates, peaking over 10%. Then as we move back to really 1981 here, you're going to see this 18.45% interest rate in October of 1981. Now that is the highest one that I saw, and really that's kind of as we're leading into another major crisis back in the 80s that banks had some serious issues. A lot of banks closed down. You hear the term moral hazard. That's the time frame that comes from, no moral hazard. So now we have a little bit more safeguards in place. I hope that we never see a rate as high as 18.45% again. That was before I was even born, and I guess I personally never have to live through a time that mortgage rates are that high. All right, everybody, I hope that was informative for you. I hope you came away with a little more information than you had going in. I know looking at graphs are a little bit dry, like I said in the beginning of the video, but if you stuck with me, now you've got some great information about the times of the year that are going to be the best for you to buy if you're looking for it. And if you're able to, you know that you should jump on it as quick as you can, because those interest rates are your worst enemy, unless for some reason they drop, which we are just not seeing any sign of right now. But that's not exactly my wheelhouse. I just want to help you make your dreams come true. So come along with me and let's unlock your forever together.